Ah,
Good morning, Rabbi. Nice talk.
have a good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Shaviz, Perek Yud, Halacha Gimel. We are in middle of the Mishnah. We're going to start Mamish on top of Daf Pei Hey. We have really three Daf left, Pei Hey, Pei Vav, and Pei Zayin. The first halacha that we will learn today in the Mishnah is the rule that we already made mention to it yesterday, that ein koisvin prusbel ella al hakarka, which means that the takon of Hillel, which allows us even only through the prusbel to be able to somehow circumvent the prohibition of not demanding payment for a loan, which allows us somehow to circumvent the positive commandment of relinquishing the loan. As we learned yesterday, being that nowadays, Shemitah, this halacha, this asay and lois asay is only midrabanan. That's why the Chachamim have the power, because they saw there is a need to it, to enact the medium of a prusbel, which will allow for a loan to be loaned and for the lender to be allowed to collect it. When is that effect? When does that apply? Says the Mishnah, only if the borrower owns real estate. Now we're going to see many details about it. Really, in the Bavli, we had a machlokes rishonim as to the reason, and over here between the Marafulda and the Rashirilio, they all bring different rishonim. So we're going to reiterate, we're going to chazer the two main reasons behind that halacha. And what do we do if the borrower doesn't have real estate? We're going to learn a little bit about the din of Zechia. We're going to address a little bit whether Zechia is mitam shlichus or not. There's a lot in today's daf over here that are much bigger than the dinim only of Shemitah. We're going to have a question in the Mishnah whether a beehive is halachically considered real property or whether a beehive is considered movable property. Now, we're going to clarify. We're going to limit the topic. It's not any beehive. It's a man-made beehive that's on the ground, but it's not physically connected to the ground. It's simply resting on the ground.
All right, did you say that the only good collateral is real estate? Is that what we're just basically saying? For Cruzwell, of
The
course.
ideal collateral
Right.
is real estate, and many debts, a debt is going to be leaned to real estate generally, not to movables, because you can't get it. The person can claim he doesn't have it anymore. Mishnah is going to speak about what will happen if there was a debt and a prus bill was not written, and the borrower wants to repay the debt. Is that something that's allowed? And how is it done? We're going to have all of that in our Mishnah. Now, the Gemara today is going to go back to the beginning of the Mishnah, to the rule that we learned yesterday, and let's review this right now. And that is that a prusbul hamugdam, a predated prusbul, by a prusbul will be kosher. And as we explained, it's very logical. A prusbul is valid only for loans that were made prior to the execution of the prusbul, right? So if they decided to predate it, that diminishes the power of the lender to collect, because you can only collect from debts that were written, that were done prior to the prusbul. So any document that the date is changed, but it's to the detriment of the holder of the document, that document is valid. The lender, so to say, gave up certain rights. The lender has the right to give up his right. The lender never has the right to impose rights that he does not have on the borrower. So by a prusbul, if they post-dated it, a prusbul hama'uchar is puzzle, as the Mishnah said yesterday. And in contrast, when we have any loan document, any shtarei chayv, the rule is the opposite. Think about it. It's logical. If it's hamugdamim, if you predated any loan document, what happens if you predate it? If you predate it, it enhances the rights of the lender over the real property of the borrower. Because from when the loan is given, a documented loan, there is an automatic lien on the properties of the borrower, which means even if the borrower sells his properties, the lender will be able to take those properties away from the ones who bought it off the borrower, but that's only from when the loan was made. So if he predates the loan, if he's attempting to enhance his right, so then it's going to be invalid, puzzle. The opposite, same logic, that if the lender, for whatever reason, agreed to post-date a loan document, so here again, he has the right to forgo his rights, such a document will be kosher. That is the rule that we had in the Mishnah, and because of that, we're going to have today halachas that are much bigger than only prusbul. We're going to learn a lot today, and God willing tomorrow, certain laws about documents. We're going to have to learn certain laws about testimony. We're going to review the rule that kiven shehigid shuv eino chayzer magid, which means that once witnesses submit testimony in a beis din, they can never recant, right? They can never recant that testimony by submitting new testimony. Once they said witness and it was accepted, they cannot undo it. Now we'll find certain exceptions to that, but that's going to be a very foundational rule that we're going to focus on today. And finally, let's see how far we get. What do we do if we find a document that's dated on Shabbos or Yom Kippur? It doesn't say it was written on Shabbos. It says it was written on day so-and-so, but we know that day so-and-so and that year fell out on Shabbos, which means that either it was predated or it was post-dated. Do we assume the worst? Do we assume that it was post-dated? I'm sorry, the predated, a predated loan document is puzzle, or can we assume that it was post-dated and therefore it's going to be kosher and a lot more? So Chevra Daf Pei Hey Amud Aleph, all the way on top of the Amid. Again, we are in middle of Halacha Gimel, and the Mishnah continues by telling us the rule. Chevra, let's go together. That ein koisvin prusbel el ala karka. That a prusbel can only be written if the borrower owns land. Now, there are two main reasons in the Rishonim, and we're going to read both of them. Over here, let's begin with the Marafulda, all the way on the top right. El ala karka, because sha'oz chashuv hachoyt gegavi lebezdin gavaldik v'loy korinan bei loy yigois. Just like we learned before, that if a loan was given to a borrower and the lender took collateral, just like if the lender has a mashkin, we view that loan as if it's already collected. Even though you don't take the real estate, doesn't matter. There's a lien on the real estate. So what allows, again, we're struggling with the fact that through such a simple medium, we circumvent the din of the Torah, of lo yigois, of Shammait. How do you do that? So I know yesterday we said it's only a midrabanan nowadays, so the Chachamim have the right to circumvent it. But still, how do they do that? So in addition to the concept of Hamaiser Shtoiraisiv Lebezdin allows you to collect it, and this is like giving over your documents even though you physically didn't do it, in addition, the borrower needs to have real estate, because then the Chachamim viewed the lender as if he already took possession of the debt, because it's liened on the real estate. That's the Marafulda. Now look inside the top of Rashi Ilio. And by the way, I want to add something to that. Just like we learned before, that when you give a loan, Nisanel, and the lender takes collateral, even if the loan was of $1 million, and the collateral was one needle, remember we learned that? He's still allowed to collect. It's considered as if the loan is collected. By the way, same thing with the real estate. We don't need for the real estate to have the value of the loan. Real estate, even more than movables, you can argue, come to a lay, that a little piece of real estate is worth $1 billion because it could be worth that. Okay, now look inside the Rashi Ilio. Ella ala karka. The Rashi Ilio quotes what we learned to Rashi in Gittin, a whole nother logic, that who has to have real estate? The borrower. Im yesh karka loloiva. Why? Because prusbul is a rabbinic enactment, and there's a rule that the Chachamim only make enactments for usual situations. On unusual situations, on milsa deloy shkicha, on something that's unusual, the Chachamim don't address the unusual. They allow things to be the way they should be, or they made an exception. They made a way out. It was unusual for people to lend money to a borrower who has no real estate. I want you to know that we're living in a little bit in a different world, maybe because of Golus, that we know for sure. People wonder a lot, but it was very unusual for people not to have real estate. And when people who had no real estate were considered very poor people, and it wasn't that you don't trust them. You can trust them, but you can't pay back if you don't have how to pay back. Let's read it inside. In the Rasherilio. Tekinu ela b'zman shachoiv ala karka kishar roiv shtarois shehein goyvim min karka. Then the have a milsa de shchicha. This is what Rashi writes in Gittin. So here we have the two main reasons: milsa lo shchicha, or because of the Chachamim, part of Hillel's takana was saying that if there is real estate, it's as if it's a mashkin, which is great. Now, back in the Mishnah. Now let me ask you a question. What happens if the borrower doesn't have real estate? So you would think you can't do a prusbul. You could do a prusbul. How do you do that? If the lender owns real estate, as we just mentioned, it doesn't matter how much real estate does the borrower own. The lender gifts, let's say the lender gave a loan of even $100. He can give him 1 granule of real estate. Now, how do you do that? So there is a kinyan of zechia. Zechia means that if I am doing something that's only to your betterment, even if you don't know I'm doing it on your behalf, like if I find a lost article of great value, hefker, I can pick it up for me, and for whatever reason, if I want to pick it up for you, if I picked it up for you, it's yours, even though you don't even know that I did it. You didn't appoint me to be your shliach. You don't have awareness of it because mizaken lo adam shaloi b'fanav. Now, you can argue that the lender gifting the borrower a piece of real estate is not to the betterment of the borrower, because now that the borrower will own real estate, now the prusbul will be effective. Now the borrower will have to pay back the loan. But we don't look at what will the zikui cause. We look at the act of you not owning real estate and me gifting you a piece of real estate. Me giving you a piece of real estate is something to your betterment. The fact that this will now, step number 2, allow the lender to write a prusbul, we don't look at it that, at some point, anything that's good becomes bad. And anything that's bad becomes good. We don't look. We look at the immediate. I want to say something. That when we learned the sugya of Zechia in the Bavli, we spoke, just to review, many people say that Zechia is mitam shlichus, which means that just like we find from the Torah, the concept of shlichus normally means that you, the mishaleach, you have to appoint me to be your proxy. Zechia means that even though you didn't appoint me, it's as if you appointed me. If Zechia is mitam shlichus, then this logic that I said would not make sense. Because you would never appoint me, you the borrower would never appoint me to be mizaka to you a piece of real estate if that means that now you have to pay back the debt. It's not worth it for you. And therefore, like many already, we learned this in the Bavli, the Gemara says, mitzad zechia, mitzad shlichus, the Gemara separates them always. Zechia is a new din. It's not because you appointed me. I don't need to be appointed. When I do something on your behalf, I don't need you to appoint me. And that makes more sense for it to work in our context. Let's read it inside. Now, we had this in the Bavli, this psukim for everything. If the borrower doesn't own land, so then the lender, mizakahu betoich sodeu kolshahu, the lender is mizaka to him. He gifts it to him. He grants him a gift without his knowledge. And how much? Like we said before, a needle of a mashkin, a needle allows the loan to be collected because he has a mashkin. It can be a granule, period. Another rule, what happens if the borrower owned, or to some degrees he owns real estate, but the borrower already gave it to someone else for another loan. Someone else already has possession of it, but not as ownership, but as collateral for another loan. Doesn't matter. It's still considered that the borrower owns that land, because if the borrower will pay back to that guy money, he's going to get his land back. In other words, the type of land that the borrower needs to have, which will allow the lender to write a prusbul, doesn't mamish have to be safe, secured real estate. Any type of real estate. Many of the Rishonim say that the word bo'ir is lav davka. The problem is, why does the Mishnah say it? I don't know. But it doesn't mean in this city. It means if he owns a sada, even though, again, this borrower had borrowed money from someone else, he already defaulted. that guy didn't collect it as payment. He told him, until when you repay me, I'm going to move into your house. But he still owns the house. It's still his house. Because if he pays that debt, he'll get the house back. So he has land. Okay, we'll stop over here. Now, Rabbi Chutzpis Oimer. Let's remember, Chevre, when a person gets married, if they're kala turning their wife, if she brings things into the marriage, so there are two ways of classifying that which she brings in. One is by classifying it as nichtzei tzoim barzel, which would mean that those items now belong to the husband. Elama, if he divorces her, if he predeceases her, then the value of those items, how they were worth when they got married, that value will be a debt that she will collect from his estate. Nichtzei tzoim barzel. Nichse melug means that if she wants, then she specifies in the ksuba, what I'm bringing in belongs to me. While we are married, you have the user fruit. You get the pluck from it. Which means that a married woman, if she brought in such estates, she owns property. The husband doesn't own it. Now, if this husband is a borrower, so Rab Chutzpah says, you can write a prusbul. The husband doesn't own land, doesn't matter. The fact that while he's married, he has the user fruit to the land. Let me add to that, what will happen if she will predecease him? It's not like, now, we don't say this when Reuven has a father Yaakov who has land and Reuven has nothing and Reuven is a borrower. We don't say that when Yaakov passes away, Reuven will own land. But here, even in the marriage, even when they're both alive, he's already using that. So that's enough ownership, it's a chiddush, to allow a prusbul to be written. No one is keeping anything now. We're just speaking about the borrower, the husband has no real estate, but since the wife has property that was introduced into the marriage, it's enough for you to allow the lender to write a prusbul. Or even better, the biggest chiddush that you have, orphans who are minors, whether the father did the right thing or not, maybe he wasn't prepared, is that whenever you have minor orphans that inherited real estate, the community is obligated to appoint a overseer, a apotropos, to make sure that no one takes advantage of the orphans. Now, if the apotropos has a lot of rights, I mean, obviously, Beis Din will only appoint an apotropos that's trustworthy, but he has the right to borrow money for the orphans. And many a time, the lenders will lend money because the apotropos has real estate. So what happens if orphans have no real estate? The father left them a lot of movables. He left them a bank account. So you have to have a apotropos. A loan was made. Money was borrowed for the orphans. Who owns the land? The apotropos. That's enough for you to write a prusbul. It's very similar to the husband with the wife, even though he doesn't own it. But since in the marriage, same thing here, it's in a different direction, but it's enough of land.
Wait, the orphans, at what age can the orphans borrow money? Because they can't borrow anyway. He has to borrow for them.
That's
right?
Exactly what's happening.
So therefore, it's his collateral versus...
And therefore, in other words, he represents them so much, not only enabling him to borrow for them, but his land, his property,
is collateral.
Is considered collateral. Gewaldig. Now, all based on the fact of the rule that you can only write a prusbul if the borrower has real estate. So let's see what's called real estate. And this din, again, now we're getting out of the dinim of Shemitah, we're broadening the conversation. Kaveres, devoidim, a beehive. Now, a beehive, we're speaking about a beehive that's, I'm going to read the Mara Fulda. It's more or less the middle of the Amud, I think 14 lines from the top. He writes like this. If we're speaking about a beehive that's connected to the ground with tit, with tar, that means someone made it and they connected it. Once something is connected to the ground like a home, it's considered real estate, even though it's above the ground. It's made out of steel. So we're not speaking about a beehive First of all, there are two types of beehives. Let me say that. There's a man-made beehive and then there is a bee-made beehive. The beehives that bees made are connected to the ground. They're connected. They're not just a ball that can roll away. That's also connected to the ground. We're speaking about a person who made beehive. People make beehives because I guess they get bees and they get honey. Yeah, correct. The topic that we are discussing is a beehive that's not like on Kevon's picture. It's not on pegs. It's on the ground. It's laying on the ground, but it's not affixed to the ground. That is the type. That's what the Manafulda says. If it's affixed to the ground, it's real estate. If not only is it not affixed to the ground, but if it's on pegs, if it's on a stand, if it's on a bench, it's vaday not karka. But if it was laying on the ground, we have a machlokes tanoim. And l'mayin afkemina, whether it's considered karka or metaltalin, for many dinim. Let's read inside the Mishnah. Kaveres devoidim. So number one, hariyeke karka, says the Marafulda, means when you want to acquire it, there's a huge difference in the laws of acquisition of kinyanim. What do you need to do to acquire movables? Hagba'ah, mishicha, right? You don't do even those who say that midoraisa kesef is koina, even if kesef is koina midoraisa. Nowadays, money is not enough. You have to take possession of it. Shemanisifu chitecha baliyah. Masha'enk in real estate, kesef is a bona fide kinyan. More by real estate, it's kesef, it's shtar, it's chazaka. We're going to learn Masechtas Kedusha and all the different kinyanim. In other words, it's considered karka concerning what kinyan is needed. Number two, the koisvin allow prusbal. The law in our Mishnah, it's amazing that Rabbi didn't write our din first. Doesn't matter. What happens if the borrower, all the borrower owns is this type of beehive? That's fine, because it's considered real estate. He owns real estate. Number three, the eina mikabelas tuma b'mekoyma. Is it susceptible to becoming tamei? A keli is susceptible to becoming tamei. Real estate never becomes tamei. So if a source of tuma had halachic contact with it, if it's real estate, it won't become tamei. And number four, the most shocking, if it's considered real estate, then we view taking honey out of this beehive on Shabbos, mamish, like picking a fruit off a tree, which is asen midoiraisa. So if you do it by accident, koitzer, you're chayiv chatas. V'haroidem imenu b'Shabbos. If you detach honey from it on Shabbos, chayiv chatas. How great is that?
A question. It's not attached to the ground. I know you just went through it, but why would you consider that karka? It's not attached.
Question, Vlad. Think. Okay, let me think about something. How is a tree connected to the ground? How is it connected to the ground? Tree is wood. Ground is ground.
Shorish. Roots.
So what? So mistama, there's a bee that has the feet in the ground and the legs in the kaveres. I don't know how a beehive works, but the Chachamim are saying that a beehive interacts enough with what's underneath it that it's considered connection, according to the Tanakama.
So basically,
you're saying that if you do Mashiach, you don't acquire it.
Kaveres is always karka.
Kaveres is not always karka. There's a machlokes tanoim here.
Well, if it's on the ground, it's automatically karka by what I'm reading. No,
if I put a chair on the ground, the chair is not karka.
I'm talking about kaveres.
Yeah, kaveres devoidim. That's what the Tanakama is saying. That whatever it is that happens inside of it between the bees, mistama, there's enough like roots.
So the picture that Kevon just had,
not the right picture.
That's not karka.
That's not karka.
Okay.
What I understand is even if it's on the ground, Rabbi.
Yeah.
If you lift it up and you do Mashiach, so are you saying that now it's no longer on the ground? So then
that's for sure. Everyone will hold. If you lift it up and you do Mashiach, you're going to be koined because now it became a taltalin. That's what the Marafulda is saying.
So it's more of like if you.
What happens if only kesef was given? What happens if only kesef was given? If it's considered always metaltalin, then even though you'll get a mishapara if you back out, but it's not a finalized kinyan, you have to do akba. The Tanakama says no, it's karka. At the biggest chiddush is it's toilish. Now manual 4.
Is there anything else like this
that
we have? Is there anything else we have that like it's an item, but if it sits on the ground, we consider it karka?
Not to my memory. It's amazing. Of course not. That's what I'm saying. The only thing is the beehive.
Isn't the beehive destroyed once you move it? The bees leave.
I don't know. In other words, and if that's the case, yep. So I'll tell you something else, Kevin. So if that's the case, like if you know what's going on with bees, one of the ways you make a kinyan on metaltalin is called agav karka. So if, in other words, if I don't want to lift it up, I'll find out, I can find another kinyan in which metaltalin, I also acquire a piece of real estate. I make a kinyan money on the real estate, and agav, the real estate, I'm also going to acquire the kaveras. In other words, if you want to make a kinyan on it, you got to pick it up. Or like I mentioned, kinyan agav karka. He's going on the same order. And the ain koisun ala prusbel. It's not considered real estate. If all the borrow, and therefore, listen, the solution will be again that the lender can be mizaka to him, kolshahu. There are other solutions, but this is not a solution. Number 3, umakabelas tuma b'mekayma. And number 4, v'haroidim imenu b'shabes. If you're going to take honey out of this type of beehive, potter means it's asr midrabanan, potter avalosir, but you're not chayiv chatas. Now let's go back to the dinim of Shemitah.
So the Chachamim are exactly opposite to Rebbe Eliezer.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. Now, man-made beehive. So yeah. I'm saying man-made because, in my understanding, if the bees would be the ones that would make the whole thing, it would be considered karka. That's my understanding of it. It's a man-made. Machloikas tanoim. Now,
I don't think the bees make it on the ground, Rabbi. I think they make it like up on a branch or something.
When you say the they, so the Mishnah is speaking about other theys who put it on the ground. The Mara Fulda says, "Kishehi mechuberes bekit betit halkol moedem shikekarka." The imi monachas agabe seidois hakol moedem sheinim kekarka el katalush loinechal ko el kishi monachas ala karka ve'enim mechuberes. Let's go right. No prusbol was written, and the borrower wants to pay back a debt. So the lender is obligated to verbalize to the borrower, he has to tell him the words, Mishamet Aini, I relinquish the debt. In other words, he did not collect it. The borrower is paying back a debt on his own. The lender has to tell him one time, not 2 times, not insisting, one time, Mishamet Ani. Now, if the borrower says, Im Amarloi Afal Pikain, okay, I still want to pay you back. So then the Mishnah says, Yikabel Heimenu. Yikabel doesn't mean he has to, it means he's allowed to. Of course, Shenemar, no. Shenemar, as it says, now the proof of the Mishnah is not that he can accept it. I can accept a gift. If the borrower is paying it back on his own, why does the lender have to say anything? Number 1. Number 2, if he has to say, maybe he has to say it 2 times or 3 times, because it says, Vizeh in Parshas Re'eh. V'zeh devar hashmita, and that's a drasha. Devar is dibur. Shmita means to relinquish, to let go, and v'zeh is once. That's what Chazal say. So not at least, one time, even though he didn't collect, the borrower is given. You can say, if you're giving me money, I can take the money. I have to verbalize, I'm not taking it. Once I did it once, if the borrower insists, then take it. And similarly to this, what happens if you have a Ritzeya, God forbid, which has to run away to one of the cities of refuge? In all of the circumstances that we have the cities of refuge, whether it is like murder b'mezit prior to the Din Torah, whether it is after it was ruled in Beis Din that it was manslaughter, it was a shoygig, but nevertheless the manslaughterer has to be there until the passing of the Kohen Gadol. Now he goes to the city of refuge, and v'ratzu anshu ir lachabdoi, and people in the city want to give him honor. He's obligated to say once, Amar Ritzeach. Yoimer lohen Ritzeach ani. Once he said it once, if the townspeople tell him, that means I'm a manslaughterer. Amru loy afal pikein. We still want to give you honor. So then Yekabel ma'am, he's allowed to accept it. Same, because it says in Parsha Shoftim, Shenemar v'zed devar Ritzeach. So there's 2 limudim. Devar means dibur. He has to say Ritzeach, and v'zed means he only has to say it one time. Something, misarvin, whenever you have the din, like you tell a person to go daven for the Amid, if the one who's asking you is not a gadol, however you define that, then you have to say, I don't want. But once is not enough. I don't want, please, I don't want, please, I don't want. Even though The guy who's asking doesn't want. The guy who's being asked once, Anyways, here it's only one time. Now, the Gemara is going to go here to the first din of the Mishnah. Guys, you have to remember the din over here. Prusbul is the opposite from a loan document. By a loan document, Chevra, the rule is that if it's mugdam, if you predate a loan document, it's invalidated. Because again, a loan document allows the lender to collect from the real estate. You can only collect from when you gave the loan. If you predate it, then you're upping your koyach. You don't have the right to do it. If you post-date it, so then you're forgoing your right. You can do that. The opposite is an aprusbul. What's the logic? Since, like we mentioned, a prusbul is only valid for the loans that were made prior to the prusbul. So if you predate it, you're giving up your rights. So it's valid. If you post-date it, it's not valid because you are increasing your rights. Shkoyach. So says the Gemara, when it says in the Mishnah, prusbul hamugdam, a predated prusbul is valid. Because the lender is weakening his power, like we says, when he weakens his power, when he forgoes his rights, it's okay. If he's going to post-date it, he's adding to his rights, puzzle. Because he is enhancing his power. He's taking power that's not his to take. Same thing in the opposite. When it comes to loan documents, is the opposite. If you predate a loan document, so you're upping the lender. The lender writes the document. You're upping your right, but you don't have that right. Because when the borrower sold real estate yesterday prior to the loan, nothing was lien to it. The buyer did due diligence. The buyer knew there's no lien. And now the lender is going to be able to go and it's not right. Psulim. But hamucharim kshedim v'pnei shu meida koichoi. All right. Now, the Gemara wants to know, mi moidia. What's the mi moidia? There's two opposite ways of learning it. It's getting late. We're going to follow one way. Look inside the Rashidilio, the last one in the left column. According to him, the Gemara's question is on a loan document. And we said that a loan document that was predated becomes invalid. Mi moidia means, how would we know? When you see a document, the presumption is that it was written on the date that the loan was given. The dating is proper. Very good. So you have a loan document. It's not a forged document. The signatures are authenticated. But you're saying, since it was predated, it's invalid. How would Beis Din know? That's the way that Rashidilio understands the question. It's about a loan document. Turning to that Peyayim with Beis. This is very important. So Shimon Barba says in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, who will be the one who has the power to do that? Hachasumen bishtar, the witnesses. If the witnesses testify that, listen, we signed a document, but it was a predated document, that invalidates the document. And the problem is, how can the witnesses have such a power to invalidate a document that they themselves signed? Like we spoke out in the intro, there's a rule, kiven shehigid shuven echayzru magid. That's a very important rule. And that means that once testimony from witnesses was submitted and accepted in court, they cannot submit new testimony that will somehow contradict the prior testimony. Can't do that. So wouldn't their coming to testify that the loan is predated, wouldn't that be like contradicting the first testimony? So that's the Gemara's kasha. How can Rabbi Yechanan say that the case is, we know it's from the witnesses? Now, it could have been from other people. In other words, if they would have said B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, the only way we would know, we'll see in a case soon. We'll see soon if the date of the document is Shabbos and Yom Kippur. But you already know something is off. We'll get to that soon. If other people testified, that's something easy to accept. But the chiddush of Rabbi Yechanan is that even the witnesses that signed the document, they can come and tell the Beis Din that it's predated, thus invalidating the document. So frek the Gemara loy kein amar Rabshim Melakish that asu divrei hachasumim bishtar kemi shenechra idusam beBeis Din, that once people sign their names on a document, it's as if they themselves testified in court, and the Gemara Yerushalmi is mekatzed, and everyone knows the rule that when it comes to people verbally testifying in court, kiven shehigid shuv eina chayzer umagid. That's the Gemara's kash. Okay.
It doesn't allow for any typos or mistakes. Wrong take down. Can't change it.
Now, I want to say something very important, but let's first read the answer. Then I'll go to a big machlokas Rishonim over here. So answers the Gemara. This is asked in the Bavli. Tamon over there, meaning I'm sorry. Tamon means over there. They Shlakish, who said that witnesses that are signed is as if they testified, and how can they undo it? Is only if they were to come later and they were to say we never signed. So you have a document, you have witnesses that are signed on it. If the witnesses come and say we didn't sign it, I'm going to add a very important nuance in a moment. That is where the Shlakish says that's undoing their testimony. Once Beis Din accepted the document, and that's as if they verbally testified, they cannot submit new testimony by saying it's not ours. And Achanami, Tamon, Reish Lakish, who says that divrei, that signed testimony is like oral testimony, is only if they orally say, Loi chosamnu kol iker. But since over here, they are not undoing the testimony. They are not saying we didn't sign it. They're saying we signed it. Whatever you know is emes. There's a document, yeah. A loan was given, yeah. We signed it, yeah. But we're giving you added information. It happens to be that the added information invalidates everything. And a chanami. But that's already allowed. But Ramhache, Amrei, here they're saying, Ramhachi Amrei alzeh chosamnu, v'loy chosamnu alzeh. What they're saying right now is we signed on the loan, but there is one thing for which we didn't sign. You know for what we didn't sign? For the date. Now hold on. In other words, since they're not retracting their earlier testimony, they can come and add new information. Now there is a huge machlokas rishonim. The Ramban says that this is only true if we have no other source to notarize or to authenticate the document other than their testimony. And to quickly review, when you have a document in court and you have people signed on it, whenever it needs to be authenticated, there are three ways of doing it. One way is for Beis Din to hear from people who recognize the signatures of the names that are written on there. Way number two is for them to get another document that was already authenticated with the same signature and to compare one with the other. In America, when you notarize documents, that's what you do. You sign in a notary, and then you can compare signatures. The third way is to have the witnesses themselves come and say, we signed it. So the Ramban says that this answer of the Gemara only makes sense if the only way we can notarize this document is by having them testifying on their own signature. Since we need them to authenticate it, they have now the right to say, we signed it. We signed it about the loan, but we didn't sign it about the date was wrong. Because without them, you have nothing. Because you can claim the whole thing is a forgery. However, the other Rishonim, the Ran and the Balamoyer say it's not true. That even if the Beis Din is able to authenticate the document from another place, by other witnesses or by their own signatures from another document, since they are not invalidating their signature, yeah, we signed it. We signed it about the loan. They're adding only, we didn't sign it about the date. They're still believed. It's a big chiddush. Let's go weiter. Now, let's go to another very important machlokes. Now that we established that even the witnesses themselves, for sure other witnesses, can claim that the document is predated and it's invalid, how far is it invalid? There's many levels of invalid. So machlokes, big, these are big machlokes. That invalid. Okay, let's go back to it. Now, how much is it invalidated? Rabbi Yochanan says, psulin mamish, it's mamish invalidated. What does it mean, mamish invalidated? That even from the real date, now we have other witnesses. Let's go, we have other witnesses that these witnesses, and they say it says the 1st of Tishrei, says the 1st of Tishrei, the loan happened the 1st of Mar Cheshvan. Okay. Now, what does it mean invalid? So says the Marafulda in explaining Rabbi Yechanan that even from the first of Mar Cheshvan you cannot collect. It's completely invalid. Not only invalid from the date in the document that we know is predated, even from the real date you can't collect real estate. Shimon Lakish says, no. It doesn't mean invalid. It means now that we know that it was predated, so the lender was trying to take more rights. So we don't give him more rights. But since there was a loan and the loan is documented, so at least from the real date of the loan, he's allowed to collect from real estate. Big machlokes. Says the Gemara is going to have a question to which there is no answer on the Ashita of Reish Lakish. That if the meaning of psula means, according to Reish Lakish, it's not mamish puzzle. It's puzzle from the wrong date, but it remains kosher from the right date. Our Mishnah worded the difference between prusbul and loan documents in a very straightforward way, that they work in the opposite way. In one, post-dated is good, right? Predated is bad, and the other, the opposite. There is another Braisa that words it differently, and it's not going to work over here. Now look inside the words of the Braisa. The words of the Braisa does not contradict the Mishnah. Don't get nervous. But V'hotani, we learned in a Braisa. Prusbul, listen to these words. Baya prusbul, bein mugder, bein mu'ucher kosher. Whether it's predated, whether it's post-dated, it's kosher. But what does kosher mean? Kosher means, now we said before that a prusbul, since a prusbul only affects loans that were given prior, if you post-dated, it's not good. So the Braisa explains itself that when I said a post-dated prusbul is kosher, I don't mean kosher from the post-date. A kosher from the real date. Okay. Now, if Reish Lakish is right, then there's absolutely no difference between prusbul and a loan document. Our Mishnah is implying there's a difference. Now there's no difference at all. If you, Reish Lakish, say what you say, which you're saying what you're saying, that puzzle doesn't mean puzzle. All puzzle means it's only valid from the date. It's going to come out that a prusbul and a loan document are mamish the same. Which means that forget about the date written because it's fake. Look at the real date and use it from the real date. So what difference will there be between a prusbul and a document? And we know there has to be a difference. And there is a difference. Because by prusbul we can be more lenient. Why? Because we mentioned the whole din of shvius is only midrabanan. On top of that, when there's land, it's as if you took a mashkin. By prusbul we can be lenient by saying that even though the date is bad, even though when the date was post-dated, it's bad, it's still okay, only collected from the real date. By a loan document, it has to be worse. That in the scenario where you predated the loan document, which makes it invalid, invalid means mamish invalid. Let's go on weiter. No. So, okay, now I want to make it clear. When we say that it's invalid, one thing is clear. Not invalid that no money is owed. That it's not considered a documented loan. That's a big difference. Because the loan was given. We have witnesses to that. But it's as if there's no document. That's a big difference because when I have a undocumented loan, there's no land lien to it. Now, what happens? Let's open up this topic. Let's see how far we can get. We have another 2 minutes. And Rabbi Brother is not here in this room yet. Shtar shezmani kosev b'Shabbos. Now, I want to say something interesting. If people know documents today from a ksuba, I think that's the most common, or tanoim. But nowadays, when you write a document, not only do you write the Hebrew calendar date, you also write the week date. Actually, in a ksuba, the first thing you write is the day of the week. That's very helpful. You don't have to do that. The case here is the documents were given a date. Lahavdil by the goyim. Look at a check. People still write checks. There's no week date. There is a date. The goyish date. There's a date. So here, let's go like this. You have a Hebrew calendar dated document, and then when you chop, you realize that that date was Shabbos or Yom Kippur. It can be Yontiv. In other words, you look at it, something was wrong. It was for sure not written on that day. The only question is, was it written pre or post? And if it's a loan document, we're saying it's a big difference because a loan document that's predated is invalid, post-dated is valid. So shtar shizmanei kosev b'Shabbos or basara b'Tishrei. Machlokes tanoim. Rabbi Yehuda, which is Rabbi Yehuda, says it's okay. In other words, the presumption is that the loan actually took place before the date, which means that they post-dated it. Post-dated loan document is kosher. That's the presumption. Rabbi Yossi, poisel, because he presumes, no, it's once we know it wasn't written on the date in the document, so his presumption is that the date is from before when the loan was given. The loan was given on Sunday. The loan was given on Gutstag. That's the Havamin. Amru loy Rabbi Yehuda. This is between them themselves. 1 second. I know that a document like this came in front of you, Rabbi Yossi, in the city of Tzipori, a loan document, and you said that it's kosher. You allowed the document to stand. How can you say now that it's not good? So Amar loy Rabbi Yossi responded, no. It's not true. Ani lo yiksharti. I never said it's kosher. And you know what? If I said it's kosher, I made a mistake. That's the meaning of the words. Ve'im ichsharti, and now I retract. I think we stop over here because now we're going to have a whole back and forth as to what's the rationale behind Rabbi Yossi. It's not what it sounds like. The way we worded it now is the Havamina. That it's not the date. So Rabbi Yehuda, it's almost like you're down like schus. Everyone knows you can't predate a loan document. It was post-dated. The loan was given Erev Shabbos and they wrote the next date. They gave the borrower a day of breathing, so to say. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, if you see it's not the right day, then we think the worst. He's like negative. The Gemara tomorrow will reject that logic. There's another reason why Rabbi Yossi says it's puzzle. And that actually it's going to fit a lot more. We're going to remind ourselves of the fact that Rabbi Yossi didn't remember. But Rabbi Yossi, at a time, according to Rabbi Yehuda in Sipaidi, he validated such a document. And now he's retracting. So we're going to see some nuance over here to be continued. We are learning right now in the heart of Dinei Shtaros, which is a really fascinating sugya.